Mom says she's going to skip the whole week.
Why?
Being left alone with you three. What is the name of 9-1?
Using ratio and properties.
Ratios. I think it's ratios and proportions.
He made me think that I said it wrong.
I thought it was properties. I wouldn't look at it.
Hey, it's okay. I've made the same mistake. Let's say the 13th.
Yep.
3-13-14. Hey, next month we get to go with 4-14-14.
Couldn't find no drawings this morning.
Very cool. Proportions are something you should be used to dealing with. For instance, first I want to talk about ratios. Ratios compare two numbers. You know how you're used to seeing a ratio written? Like this. What word do you think I'm getting ready to write?
Fraction.
You're used to ratios being called fractions. But when speaking of ratios, a ratio is a fraction. However, it's not a mixed number. Okay? So if they said write a ratio, or instance, the way you could write 5 to 3 is 5 over 3. It would not be a ratio to write that as 1 2/3, would it? Because a ratio is a fraction. Another way you could say this is 5 to 3. 5 to 3. All of these mean the same thing. Or you'll see sometimes they'll use a colon. 5 to 3. But of course the most common way we're going to deal with is what? The fraction. Okay? Ratios are used, you'd be amazed how much you can use ratios in the world. One thing I always do to help entertain myself on a long 10 to 12 hour drive is I will start my watch.
Why 10 to 12 hours?
Huh?
Why 10 to 12 hours?
A long drive. Okay. You know, you're sitting there, you know how you have your odometer that goes a mile, right? You guys don't realize this, but a lot of your miles per hour are a little off in those things. And it's kind of good to know whether you're going to be about 3 miles an hour fast or slow, especially if you're wanting to go 60 and a 55, right? But, you know, if you watch it for instance, I will set a minute, and I'll see how far it goes. If in 1 minute it goes, I go 1.3 miles. Because I look at the odometer, see how far it's going, right? I can tell how fast I'm going over that minute. You guys know? What you do is miles, you don't have to write this down, per hour, right? So I went 1.3 miles in, well, 1 minute. Well, that's 1 out of what? How many minutes are in an hour? So that's 1 over 60 hours. What I do is I see, well, how many miles per hour am I going? And that would be 1 hour. And this is what we're getting ready to learn today, proportions. Cross multiply 1 over 60x is equal to 1.3. Multiply both sides by 60. Does anybody know what I get? How fast was I going? What's 60 times 1.3? Somebody do that in your calculator.
Got you right there. 60 times 1.3 equals 78.
I better slow down. Agreed? Unless I'm on the turnpike, but I better slow down if I'm not on the turnpike.
That's how fast the question is on the Franklin Street.
But you guys get what I'm saying, you know, and also you can, you know, that's a way to do that and kind of, it's always, and see if your car is, you know, if your odometer reads 75, then you know you're a little bit, it's going to be, you're going a little faster than what you are. Okay? Probably the most accurate way to do it would be actually to count, watch it when it hits 1 mile, and then set your stopwatch and then when it hits 2 miles, stop the stopwatch. That's probably more accurate. But whichever way, you use ratios to do that. Okay, and what we just did right there, what I just did to use that, you notice how I had something over something equals something over something? Anytime I have something like that, this is called a proportion. Okay? When two ratios are set equal to each other. That is called a proportion. Okay? And that's one thing people, that kind of gets lost in this. You guys, does anybody know it's the one famous thing that everybody always remembers about fractions. What can we do when we have a proportion? When we have, what can I do when I have a fraction like this? Ah, there we go. Everybody always likes, I can cross multiply, cross multiply, cross multiply. The reason you can cross multiply is because you have a proportion. So underneath this, when you have a proportion, and only then, you can cross multiply. But this is the only time. It's a pet peeve of mine is that people think that if you have, anytime you have two fractions beside each other, you can cross multiply. Well, not if you're adding them, not if you're multiplying them. Agreed? It's only when you have what in between the two fractions? An equal sign. When you have that, you can cross multiply. So in this case, what would this be if I did cross multiply? What would this become? A times what? D is equal to what? B times what? C. We cross multiplied, didn't we? So when two fractions are set equal to each other, you can cross multiply and it's equivalent. It's the same thing. But you can only do that when? When two ratios are set. You have two ratios and you have what in between them? An equal sign. You can't have a mixed number over here and a fraction over here. It has to be two what? Ratios. Very important. Just kind of one of those general things I hope you remember. Believe it or not, that's about all this section is over. So now, let's do, now there's a little more to it, but let's do this worksheet. Has everybody got this down? Can I cover this up? Sure? Okay. Look at our first, right here, let's look at our 9-1. Write each ratio in simplest form. This is the same as reducing a fraction, is it not? However, the one thing to remember, Maddie, you need a worksheet. One thing to remember is they're asking you to write this as a ratio. So what does that mean you can't have? Maddie?
Door.
Can you get the door for me? Right here. This one's no big deal. And you see if you guys figure it out what you have to be careful of when we get to it, because we'll do all of these. 12 over 15. How can I reduce that? 4. Which number goes into both of those evenly? A common factor. 3 goes into this what? 4 times goes into this what? So that could reduce to 4 over 5. Do they have any more common factors? Other than 1? No. So you know you've written that in simplest form. 2, how about it? 4 goes into this what? 2 times goes into this what? So 2 over what?
5.
So this is just almost like a review of reducing fractions, is it not? Here, is there a common factor? 3 we're going to this 1 time, 3 we're going to this 8 times. So 1 over 8. Here, what's my common factor? 2 goes into this 1 time, goes into this. So it becomes. One thing that a common mistake it seems like made with fractions is guys don't what. A lot of times when people get 1 over 9, you know what people do? No, they put 9 over 1 just because, oh, I got a 1. It means it's a whole number. You only can just put 9 when you have a 1 at the what? Bottom. Okay? Here, what number here? 12. What if you didn't see 12? What if you said 4? Okay? 4 goes into this what? 6 times. 4 goes into this what? 9 times. Would you be wrong to put 6 over 9? Yes, you would, but does that mean you need to start over? I can just keep reducing, can't I? With some of the bigger numbers, sometimes, for some of us that don't know our multiplication tables that well, that's the easier thing to do. What number goes into both? 3 will go into this what? 3 will go into this what? So that is the reduced ratio, 2 to 3. Now, what do I need to be careful of here, especially if you're using a calculator and using the A, B over C button? If I just ask you to reduce this fraction, tell me what some of you might make this. First of all, you'd make 3 goes into this what? Goes into that what? Would 1 1/3 be right? No, because they asked for this in a ratio in simplest form. So the simplest form of a ratio is what? Is not a mixed number. Okay? Write this ratio in simplest form. One thing also about ratios have no units. What does that mean, units? Give me an example of a unit. Huh? Centimeters, feet. Okay? The reason ratios don't have units. Does anybody answer that question? Guys, think that out. Why do you think they don't have units? What if I was comparing 5 feet to 3 feet? Put it off here to the side. Don't write this down. If I had 5 feet to 3 feet, why does that not have units? Why? How can I say that's a right ratio, isn't it? Why does that not have units? Can anybody tell me? In the world of mathematics, can you guys tell me what x divided by x always is? 1. What is stickman divided by stickman? 1. What is the same thing divided by the same thing? 1. So when I have feet over feet, what happens to my units? They divide into 1. And what's 1 times anything? Same thing. In other words, they cancel, don't they? So if you're writing a proper ratio, okay, there aren't any units. Because ratio is usually comparing two the same thing. So my point is 6 meters to 60 centimeters. Can anybody tell me what's wrong with this? I have meters here and what? What I need to do is make the meters into what? Centa means what? 100. So there are 100 meters in a centimeter. So 100 of these would make, 6 meters would be what? 600 centimeters over 60 centimeters. So see, if you put 6 over 60, you would be wrong. What's going on? Everything okay? Yeah, something. Okay. Now, what happens now to my units? 6 will go into this what? 1 time will go into that 10. So what is our 10 to what? 10 to 1. Ratio is 10 to 1. Now, I know when I did my example about, miles per hour, okay? That was basically two fractions set equal to. I guess officially that's not a ratio because it's not comparing two things, but it's the same concept. Two of the same things. Say 1 foot to 1 yard. What's my problem here? What should pop up at you? Your units aren't what? The same. Go ahead and take the one that's bigger so you don't have decimals. Okay, which is bigger, a yard or a foot? Okay, so let's leave the feet the same and let's change yards to what? Feet, since it's bigger. 1 yard is how many feet? 3 feet? Everyone agree? Units cancel, so what is my ratio? 1 to what? 1 over 3. Okay? Does everybody understand that? The easy part of this section is really the solving the equation. The hard part is, I don't know, learning the language, this stuff. Everybody always messes up on this, not realizing that your units need to be the same. Okay?
So that'd probably be the hardest part of the whole essay is changing units.
I would say maybe. We're going to solve each proportion. It's a proportion, so what can I do?
Cross multiply.
Very handy. X times 15 would be what?
15x.
3 times 10 would be what?
30.
Divide both sides by? X is equal to? Do I need to see every step like that on your homework?
Yes.
Good answer. What about here? What am I going to do here? I'll let you guys copy this down in just a second. Let's get these done so we can get started. What would I get? H times what? So I would give what? 14H. Is everybody okay there? What do I do here? 4 times what? Is what? Now does it look like a equation that's pretty easy to solve? Divided by what? H is? Everybody okay with this? Don't let one like 11 mess with you. Let's go to, usually 9 times 40. If you did this the way it's done in the formula, 9 times 40 is what? 360 is equal to what? 15 what? B. What am I going to divide by? Good. It doesn't matter, you just went right to left here instead of left to right like you did up here. Okay? Another thing, if it doesn't start with a decimal, don't end with 1. We're doing ratios here. So if that doesn't come out even, reduce the fraction and make it a proper ratio. Does it come out even?
24.
Well, that's nice. In case they have some like this, I want to do one, we'll call this number 16. What do I do here when I cross multiply? Anybody?
You use both numbers. You times 30 by 3.
Well, what we have to remember is when I cross multiplied, for instance, on this one. Everybody look up here. Eyes up here. When I did this one right here, when I multiplied h times 14, did I multiply everything on top of this fraction times everything on the bottom of the other fraction?
Yes.
I did. So, what's the key word there when I just said that? Anybody? Once again, I said, and this one I multiplied everything on top of this fraction times everything on the bottom of this fraction. What was the key word there I'm trying to get you to see here? Everything. What is on top here? An x plus 3. So I have to multiply everything up here times what? It's basically like doing this. Putting it in parentheses and multiplying through, isn't it? Now, do you necessarily need to write that step down? No, you just need to multiply everything here times everything up there. So 3 times x is what?
3x.
But 3 times 3 is what? So plus 9 is equal to 4 times 2 is what? Subtract 9, looks like I picked weird numbers, is equal to -1. Divide both sides by what?
3.
Any way to reduce that? No. Answer is a negative what? 1/3. Write that down so you have it.